Hello everyone, I'm your host MX2, and in this video we'll be going over the release log for HardOps 987_30 in addition to HardOps 987_31. For the most part, our goal is to continue improving stability and getting everything to streamline nicely, and this update is no exception. So without further ado, let's jump in and talk about what is new. So here I have a shape going through an auto scroll of modifier scroll, and we can see that it's comprised of some large booleans and some smaller booleans. So whenever it comes to face extract, it replaces the ability to basically shift click on Smart Apply, which will give you a Smart Apply clone, causing you to then go in edit mode, select the piece you want, press I to inset, press Alt I to invert, and delete faces, and then from here we can go in object mode and put a solidify on this shape, press 2 to push it both ways, and then from there select both and add a difference. And with that, we have just set up what face extract does, but manually, and there's quite a few key presses to that, even though I'm a big fan of Smart Apply Clone. So let us delete this, and let's press Q, and we go under Mesh Tools and we choose Face Extract. So now that we're in this mode, once we click, we are able to extract this face, which we can already see is looking better than ever compared to previous updates. And then if we press spacebar to progress, we see that during the inset process, it can get a little bit hairy because of these smaller cuts that are being inset on this particular piece that we then click and then perform the extrusion on. So of course at the end, we could press tab and we can just grab the points that go wayward and Control X dissolve them, for they should not exist. However, what if we wanted to perform a face extract without basically using the smaller booleans as part of its calculation? Well, let's jump into face extract again, and we see that there's now a dot, and a dot means that there's a dot UI. So once we click it, we now see a list of all the modifiers, and from here, just clicking on which modifiers we want to remove, we can see that they are basically being toggled off, allowing us a simpler way to perform this face extraction. So once I select this face and press spacebar, the first thing you're going to notice is all these mods are going to be reactivated because they were activated to begin with, but the shape that we're deriving is not receiving all of those notches that were causing us difficulties before. In fact, we can even see the extra point that was causing us some issues present at this point. So once we bring it in a little bit, we can click and extrude it inwards, click and apply, and just like that, we have now performed a face extract using an earlier version of the mesh to perform its extraction. So to show it again, we could press Q, go under Mesh Tools, choose Face Extract, and from here we can just toggle off which modifiers we don't want to affect. So for example, let's say we don't even want this modifier present, so we just toggle it off. We select this piece. We might want to toggle off some of these upwards notches just because they might cause us a little bit of difficulty, something like that, and we're good to go. So now, once we've extracted this piece, it's just a lot simpler for us to deal with, especially if we were wanting to cut a little lip on this area like you're seeing me do here. So just some very basic improvements whenever it comes to face extract, but face extract is definitely on its way to becoming a mainstay whenever it comes to HardOps. In addition to the improvements brought by the .UI and the ability to toggle modifiers, we've also added some advanced selection capabilities whenever it comes to performing selections inside of face extract. So here, I'm just setting myself up to perform an extraction. If I click this face and then click this face, let's say I didn't actually want this selection, I can just press Alt A and it will deselect. But most importantly is now you can click a face and select it and then Control click in order to select everything in between. So if I was wanting to perform a face extraction of this entire loop, I can just Control click my entire way around, similar to if I was working in edit mode. And then from here we just press spacebar, we're going to perform our inset and then click from here, and we're now performing our solidification. However, let's take a look at this shape, and we see that because of all the extra information that's being caught up in this, we're having some issues with this geometry being able to work out. So first, let's delete this point because it's extra. Let's see, maybe moving these points would improve things, and I'm thinking not. So for the most part, it is better if we were to dissolve them. So let's just dissolve it, giving us something a lot cleaner. And then from here, once we come out of local mode, we can see that our boolean was able to go through successfully. So if I press Q, go to solidify, we can reduce the amount of solidification, giving us something that's a little bit more complete instead of cutting all the way through it. But just wanted to demonstrate a little bit of how I use face extract when it comes to both the selection area of control clicking to select a range of faces, Alt A to deselect, and then the ability to use the .ui. So here I have another shape comprised of booleans, and we see that if I'm in Hops tool, by holding down control and hovering over the dots, we can see all the shapes that these are comprised of. So in the event that I want to smooth this, if I were to say press Control tilde and go in my helper and click on smooth, we see that it has no effect. We see that having auto smooth off and on really has an undesired effect. Really the goal is to smooth the cutters that comprise of this. So if we were to bring back each cutter and then go into helper and click smooth, we see that that rectifies the shading issues. And we could do the same thing with this one, just select it and go in and smooth it. However, there is a better way. So normally whenever it comes to shading, I will press Q and shift click sharpen in order to use the auto smooth. And now if you're inside of Autosmooth, we see that there's a hotkey where if you press S, it will basically set all of your bool shapes to smooth. So in the event that you need to keep your shape non-destructive, but perform smoothing on all of your flat shaded objects, just pressing S inside of Autosmooth will make them all smooth shaded. So this is something I've awaited for a while, and I'm happy to see it now a thing inside of HardOps. So here I have a box and I'm already inside of Boxcutter. If I were to enable snapping and then go in the snap panel and choose static dots, we now have the ability to hold control and bring up dots, but roll the wheel to get an alignment preview, which will give us alternative ways to draw our shape instead of just orienting it to the surface underneath. So now that we have our first shape cut in, we can press tab to go in edit mode, grab these three edges facing us and roll the wheel with a bevel in order to begin beveling now. So the next thing from here, generally I would just go under mesh tools, face extract this, hit spacebar and begin digging into the surface, and from here I would begin working the corner. However, a mistake made is forgetting to set the origin, which has resulted in my cuts being oriented a little differently than I would like them to under the local system. So if I were to press Q and go under mesh tools and choose set origin, we see that because of what we have done to the mesh so far, we can't set the origin exactly as we'd like. However, there is an alternative. Let's go in and click on this dot to expand the .ui, and we can now toggle modifiers off and on in order to allow us to set our origin at a particular point in time of this mesh instead of the one that we're currently given. Notice that the moment that I let go of left mouse button, the modifiers are re-enabled, but the origin has been set for location and rotation. This means that because I'm using the local system of alignment, whenever I draw a shape, it is now oriented to this area without me having to go in and toggle mods using Everscroll or something like that. I'm able to just handle it all inside of set origin, the tool that has the problem that has to be solved. So from here, I can select a cutter, select a target, press Alt X, and just mirror that across. And just like that, you now see that set origin is capable of turning off modifiers in order to allow you to set the specific origin that you want to set without modifiers being in the way. So Radial Array has also seen some improvements this update. So if we grab this shape, we can just press S and Z, scale it down, and let us first select the cutter and then shift select our target, press Q, and under mesh tools, under Radial Array, we can shift click to Radial Array around our selected object. And this is one of the reasons why set origin is so important to have correct, is because we want to Radial Array it correctly. So with this particular empty, we are going to use this as a share empty, meaning I'm going to move it out of the cutters collection to my general collection so it doesn't get hidden. And then when I press 1, we are now looking at it permanently instead of it disappearing with every use. So now if I draw another cut and hold shift to keep it live, we can just select the empty, press Q, Radial Array, and we see that it has been placed. In fact, at this point, I also forgot to mirror it across itself, so let's mirror it. We see that things are just not right because we are mirroring after the Radial Array. So let us select the object, and we want to move the mirror above the array so that way it gets mirrored and then it gets arrayed. The modifier stack order matters. So let's also press Alt VE just to get ourselves a little bit better on the viewport shading front and select our target. Otherwise we are cutting a cutter. And from here we're just going to shift this to live, select our empty, press Q, and radial array. And no matter how we move the wheel, it will no longer move the cutter whenever you're performing a radial share. This was just something that carried over from our initial system for radial array, but was definitely unintended. We want users to be able to get their shape where we want them and just click and be done without having to deal with the shapes being inaccurate or having to additionally press the hotkey of A to toggle off the ability to use displacement whenever it comes to radial array. So there I performed a invalid selection. So let's select one object, one empty, press Q, radial array, and we see that no matter how I move the mouse, the shape stays still. If I do want the shapes to move, we can press A, and we see that things are definitely going to get weirder from here because of our orientation, because of our shape position, just a lot of factors that make it where whenever you perform this particular operation, you want the shape to sit still. So let's press A to toggle that off, which is the desired result. Click and apply, and we are done. So from here, we'll perform one more cut, and I'm just going to press B, roll the wheel, press T, shift to live. You know, we can mirror this across itself just so it's more trustworthy. And then with this single cutter selected, we also select our empty, press Q, radial array, and just like that, we are now set up in a radial share where all of these objects are sharing the same radial array empty, which was covered in previous updates, but just showing how there's still improvements being had with it to ensure that this process is as fluid as possible. Of course, you would never rotate your empty, but I'm just showing that everything is connected to the exact same empty. When it comes to Triangulate, there's this option for keep normals, which we generally never mess with. However, in the event that you do need Triangulate to keep the normals, when you press Q and you add Triangulate through the Add Modifier menu, pressing F9 will give you an option to check the box Keep Custom Normals, just in case you need that for your Triangulate modifier. So starting out with Boxcutter, if we were to hover over the tooltip for knife, we see that whenever you draw off the mesh, it will do a view align cut, which utilizes knife project. However, we can make every cut knife project by just toggling view. And also by toggling knife, we are inside of blue box permanently. So let's press Alt V and toggle on wireframe. So this means that whenever I draw a shape, if I press spacebar, it will perform a knife project. However, one of my favorite improvements with Boxcutter is the ability to rotate and look at the shape from any angle, and the shape will still be projected from the view of the shape itself instead of the view of the user. So while this is small, it is something that matters a lot whenever it comes to modeling with any degree of accuracy, especially when you can definitely predict exactly what the tool is going to do. So here I'm just performing some view align cuts, even giving them some taper just to help them along. So if we were to Shift A, bring in a plane with HardOps, or just with Blender, sorry, and we bevel this, convert it into a wire just for visual sake. We don't want to see that. If we were to basically press Q and shift click knife to perform a knife project, we have projected it from our view, meaning that when we look at the shape, it isn't actually in accordance with the orientation of the shape, which is understandable. Blender doesn't work that way, but I really would like knife to work that way. So if we press F9, we see that there's now a projection option where instead of just projecting from view, you can now choose whether you want to project from the Z axis of your object, which in this case we do. We want to Z project from our shape and cut through, which we can also toggle the cut through behavior to basically make it not cut all the way through. However, in this case, we probably do want it to cut through because we are utilizing knife project. But in the event that we weren't using knife project, it would be another story. And just keep in mind that no matter what type of shape you have, you can change your axis to whatever type of shape projection you're using in order to perform a knife projection exactly the way you want every time. So let's just duplicate this shape, RX, RZ, 90, and we'll just rotate it, and let's just bring it back. And just like Boxcutter, we're going to look at it from a arbitrary view, not aligned to the object or how we would want our knife project to go. And we see that whenever we shift click knife project, it retains the settings from the last usage and has performed a knife project using this shape. So we could just scale it down, select them both again, shift click again, and everything is just buttery smooth. And that is exactly what we're going for with this. We want a little bit more control whenever it comes to knife project, and this update is the one that adds it in the F9, where you can toggle through what side of axis projection you want to use whenever it comes to view knife project.